say every town has its ghost stories, the kind whispered at sleepovers or scrawled in the margins of forgotten textbooks. Most are nothing more than urban legends, stitched together from fear and boredom, but sometimes the stories are true. My name is Dr. Eleanor Voss. I'm 30 years old, and for the past 8 years, I've dedicated my life to uncovering the psychology behind mass hysteria, cultural hauntings, and institutional trauma. Not just ghost stories, but the patterns they leave behind in the people. Before the bell rang for me, the road to Grantham Academy wound like a serpent through dense pine forests, the canopy above so thick it blocked most of the morning light. I watched the GPS flicker on the dashboard. The academy stretched out like a cathedral frozen in time. Ivy crawled up the red brick walls, towering chimneys jutted into the fog. The windows, hundreds of them, were too clean, too still. As if no one inside dared to move, the guard, a man in his 60s with a long face and faded uniform, checked my ID without a word. He pressed a buzzer and the gates creaked open. The north wing, she said, was closed for renovations. But the north wing looked perfectly intact. I glanced down the corridor as we passed it. The lights were off, the air colder. A single wooden door stood at the far end, sealed with a thick iron lock. A bell hung above it. I stopped walking. "What's that door?" I asked. "Storage," Alcott said too quickly. At 2:14 a.m., I woke to a sound I couldn't place. Not loud, not sudden, just wrong, a chime. Soft, metallic, echoing, a bell. It rang once, then again, deeper this time. I sat up in bed. Wrong, then it was gone. I closed the door and locked it. I didn't sleep again that night. I spent the day reviewing the academy's case files, sitting alone in the administration office. Most of them had been withdrawn from school or transferred. None of the official records listed anything unusual. But their journals did. One file caught my eye. Evan Blake, age 17. Expelled 3 months prior, quiet, studious. Straight a student until the final semester, his grades dropped overnight. And he began writing disturbing entries in his personal notebook, pages full of blacked-out lines, cryptic phrases, one line repeated. "The bell tolls for the liar," another entry. "Don't go past the door at night. Don't answer the ringing. It's not a warning, it's a summons." Evan had carved that into the back cover. I flipped to his psychiatric assessment. He stopped speaking entirely after the 5th sighting. Then, one night, he was found standing outside the north wing door, barefoot, eyes rolled back, hand pressed to the iron bell above it. He was expelled the next day. I stared at the final sentence on the page. Evan claims the bell rang before he ever touched it. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the ceiling. The light bulb above my bed flickered intermittently. I chalked it up to the age of the building, though I knew better. At 1:33 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Slow, barefoot, not soft, wet. I stood. Not from the north wing, from right outside my door. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But the carpet beneath the light was soaked, damp footprints leading from my door. Toward the sealed corridor, I cracked the door open. The air outside smelled of copper and mildew. The hallway felt stretched, longer somehow, unnatural in its angles. My eyes drifted to the end of the hall, to the corridor that led to the north wing. It was open. The chain that had sealed it was broken. The iron bell above the door was swinging gently. The bell was still swinging, but the chain had reappeared, coiled perfectly around the handles, as if it had never been broken. I stepped backward, 1 foot, then another. My lungs were tight, my throat dry. I turned and walked quickly back to my room. When I closed the door, I found a slip of paper lying on my bed. It hadn't been there before. In shaky, black ink, it read, "If you touch the bell 3 times, it knows your name." The next day, I demanded answers from Headmistress Alcott. I confronted her in her office, slamming the paper on her desk. "Where's Helen?" It was empty except for one man, the night custodian, Richard. Gray hair, shaky hands. He wouldn't look me in the eye. I sat beside him, voice low. I heard the bell. He tensed. You looked at the door. I nodded. He wiped his forehead. Then you'll see them soon. See what? His voice was barely a whisper. The bell doesn't call them, it marks you. And once it rings for you, they remember your face. I stared at him. Who are they? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled up his sleeve. His forearm was covered in tiny scars, perfect rings, like someone had pressed hot coins into his skin. Dozens of them. He held up 3 fingers. I heard it 3 times, touched it thrice. They walk behind me now. I don't sleep. I don't dream. The tapping continued, not frantic, slow, deliberate. It was coming from the top corner of the glass, where no human could reach. I didn't move, then a new sound. Something dragging across the carpet. Inside the room, but I hadn't opened the door. I hadn't moved from the bed. I turned my head slowly. There was nothing on the floor, but the paper, the one from the night before, was gone. In its place was a new note. This time, the handwriting was sharper, almost elegant. Do not lie, do not flee, you are marked. Long hallways lined with faded portraits of forgotten faculty. Her footsteps echoed faintly as she passed through. Room 212 caught her attention. It looked untouched, the door ajar inside. Desks were still arranged neatly, papers yellowed and curled from age scattered across them. A leather-bound grade book lay open on the teacher's desk. And unnatural, Evelyn turned around. The room was empty. But the shadows under the desks had begun to lengthen, stretch, as if something inside them was trying to crawl out. She backed against the door, breath shallow, whispering, "This isn't real, this isn't real, double quotes." Then, from the center of the classroom, came the voice again, clearer this time. "She's not gone." Her journal fell to the floor with a dull thud. But before she could move, a single click echoed through the room. The overhead light sputtered on, flickering once, twice, then buzzing into a dim glow. She was alone, or so it appeared. The desks were still in place, the shadows had retreated. But something in the room felt wrong, off, like it had shifted ever so slightly, like a dream where everything looks the same but behaves differently. And there, resting neatly atop her journal on the floor, was a small object she hadn't seen before. His eyes were glassy with age, but a flicker of something fear passed through them. "You weren't supposed to find that name," he said. "Not yet," Evelyn pressed him. He took a long breath, a tragedy and a curse. He motioned for her to sit, his voice now a low, gravelly tone filled with decades of secrets. In 1946. Her body was never found. Silence hung between them like smoke. She was seen again, though, in photos, in mirrors, in dreams. Sometimes sitting in the back of classrooms where she didn't belong. Always watching, always whispering. Evelyn felt her stomach knot. So what happened next? They closed the room, boarded it up, but every few years, someone would break in, teachers, students. Lit only by a brass desk lamp, the shadows danced along the old wooden shelves. She was reading through archived staff reports, records from 1978, 1985, 1993, each containing brief, scattered notes. She flipped the final page, and something slid out, an old Polaroid photograph. It showed a classroom, room 212. Desks empty, blackboard blank, but at the center of the room stood a little girl, expecting the corridor. She saw the classroom again, room 212. Lit, glowing from within, though every light in the school was dead. The door opened for her, and the humming grew louder. I didn't know what drew me back to that particular classroom. Maybe it was the memory of the echo I had heard when I first arrived. The door groaned open with a long creak, revealing rows of broken chairs, collapsed music stands, and a chalkboard smeared with symbols I didn't recognize, just blanketed the room. I set my recorder down on the teacher's desk and began photographing the walls. Every corner of the room was layered with strange messages, some carved, and instead of lyrics, the staves bore fragmented sentences like, "They never left, music feeds her." No silence, not ever. I couldn't help it. I played the first few notes. A chill wind howled through the broken window, even though the trees outside were still. The sound that came from the piano didn't match the notes I played. It was slower, hollow, like someone else was pressing the keys with me, slightly delayed. Slightly wrong. Then I heard it, a faint hum. From behind me I turned. No one, but the recorder light was blinking red. Playback was engaged, though I hadn't touched it. A voice played, a child's voice, barely a whisper. "You shouldn't play, she listens." I slammed the recorder off and backed away. The walls were scorched in places, patches of smoke damage licked the ceiling, and the fluorescent lights above flickered irregularly, some crackling with static, others completely dead, yet, despite the degradation, I felt like I was being watched from every corner. Room 313 was halfway down the corridor. Its door stood out, clean, unscorched, and marked preserved. My hand hovered near the chain. My instinct screamed to turn back. But this was what I came for: answers, truth, closure. I used a bolt cutter from my pack, one of the many tools I never thought I'd actually need. With each snap of the rusted links, a tremor seemed to move through the walls. By the time the last link fell, the air around me was buzzing. I opened the door. Inside was a perfectly preserved classroom, dustless, immaculate, untouched by time. Desks were aligned. Her face was turned to the blackboard as if she'd just finished writing something. My voice caught in my throat, and I took a step back, but she didn't move, not until I whispered, "Hello," like it had been torn open to let out something far larger than a voice. And she screamed, but there was no sound. Not at first. Then an explosion of whispers filled the room all at once, like hundreds of children chanting overlapping lullabies in reverse. I covered my ears, stumbling back. The desks began to shake. Windows cracked inward. Light bulbs popped. The woman stepped forward, but her legs didn't move. She glided, closer and closer, mouth open wider than any human could bear, now filled with black. After the encounter in room 313, I didn't sleep. Back in the janitor's office, my makeshift safe haven, I sat trembling, trying to make sense of what had just happened. A low hum, a melody that didn't sound human. Something in that room had followed me. I could feel it. The building now pulsed with a strange rhythm. The creaks of the walls weren't random anymore. That's when I found something buried in the margins of an expulsion record, a reference to a choir catastrophe, dated 1974, 13 students. One teacher locked in the choir room overnight. None of them made it out. The official report claimed a gas leak. But every other source, every testimony I had found said something else. Something about voices, about a melody no one should hear. Inside, the room was preserved eerily well. Music stands still stood in rows, chairs pushed under. A grand piano sat at the front, though every one of its keys was burnt black. Mold crept up the curtains, and the windows, though shuttered, were completely dark, as if they led to nowhere. On the wall, dozens of photos were pinned haphazardly, class portraits. A single piece of handwritten music titled "Echoes of the Hollow." And that's when I heard it, humming. Soft, melodic, coming from the piano. There was no one at the piano, yet the keys were moving. And then the temperature dropped to freezing. The floorboards cracked. A shadow began to rise from the piano, not a person, but a shape made of smoke and screaming mouths. Each mouth whispered a name. The children's voices stopped mid-note. And the entire room began to collapse inward, as if being sucked into a point of pure darkness. I screamed, clutching my gear, bracing myself, and woke up. The school whispered at night. I'd begun recording audio on a small handheld device as I moved between rooms, and when I played it back one evening in my motel room, I froze. I didn't need to. Every inch of that cursed campus was carved into my memory. The scent of mold and decay, the whispers behind old brick walls, the screams that had once been mine. I let them believe it. It's easier than the truth. Because the truth is this: Whitmore changed me. Not just in the way trauma does, not just fear or grief or guilt, but something deeper. I fear what might still linger between the lines, what truths I might have carried home. They warned me. The locals, the old janitor, even the symbols scrawled into the very bones of Whitmore itself. They all whispered the same thing in different ways. Some knowledge should stay buried. But I was a researcher, curious, arrogant, and now I am marked, sometimes. Not for its ruins, not for what lies buried beneath. Because once you hear its bell ... once it calls your name ... you'll never truly leave, just like I never did.